morning, everyone. I believe that we are ready to get started with our formal meeting. So I would like to welcome you all to our meeting. We continue to host hybrid meetings to keep everyone healthy and safe and to create more access for our public meetings. And of course, because they are public, you are welcome to join us here in person or watch from the council's agenda page, Facebook, YouTube, or SLC TV. We hope you'll continue to join us in whichever manner you feel most comfortable, and we want to thank you for participating today. Now, if we could please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Before we move through the agenda, I want to mention and remind everyone about our rules of decorum, which are in place to ensure our meetings move along well. Shh. And to help everyone feel comfortable sharing their comments. A copy of the full rules of decorum are available at the door, and our staff will post the link in WebEx. Our next item, A4, is to approve the work session meeting minutes of January 10th, 2023, as well as the formal meeting minutes of January 17th, 2023. I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, move for approval.
Second. I have a motion by Councilmember Pui, a second by Councilmember Dugan. Do I have to roll call all of these? I don't think we do anymore. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. That passes 7-0. We are moving on to our public hearings. And the first public hearing is budget amendment number 5 for fiscal year 2022-2023. Again, just so everyone is prepared and aware, we ask that you have 2 minutes for your public hearing, or for your public comment. I'll get this right eventually. And we ask that you are respectful and to each other, to ourselves, to us, and keep your comments, respectful is all I'm asking for. The second thing is, I believe, is it Taylor that's online doing this? Who's online today? If you are in person, you have filled out a card, then I believe Brian is our staff person who is taking those cards. We will call each person up one at a time. Taylor may give 3 names at a time so you can prepare yourself. If you're online, she will unmute you and your 2 minutes will begin. At this point, going back to budget amendment number 5, and before we take any comments, I will turn the time over to Ben Ludke, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Madam Chair. Budget amendment number 5 has 24 proposed items. The total expenditure of all the items is over $33 million. Some of the largest items include $4 million in additional emergency rental and housing services assistance from the U.S. Treasury, $2.6 million for City Hall earthquake repairs, and $2.4 million for public safety radio replacements. The staff report and the administration's transmittal are available in today's meeting packet. The Council's budget webpage, which is updated throughout the year as each amendment comes to the Council, is available at tinyurl.com/SLCFY23. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Taylor, we can start with our first public comment on this matter, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is no one here to speak to this item.
Excellent. In that case, council members, I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council continue the public hearing to a future date and adopt item E1 as shown on the motion sheet.
Second.
Is there discussion about this, Councilmember Mono?
The motion sheet has both the $2 million for rental assistance and the housing stability services listed, which my understanding was that we were only going to do the rental assistance. Is that correct?
I think that what it says is that the $2 million for eligible housing stability services will be a competitive application process that will go through the board, the mayor, and final decisions made by the council. We did not want to include that on this?
I was a little confused during our discussion before, but I thought that we were only approving the $2 million for rental assistance and we were going to wait on the other $2 million. But Jennifer?
I actually am hoping Ben was tracking it. Ben, can you pop back on and help us remember?
So I can understand the confusion because it was at different points in the conversation, it was either way. The place it landed in the notes I was taking was to approve all of item E1 as proposed by the administration and not to delegate final decision-making authority, but it's entirely up to the council. We can change the motion sheet. You can choose just to do the $2 million if you prefer for rental assistance and further discuss the other $2 million at a future briefing.
I think that is where you landed, is to do only the rental assistance that was going to the state to help pay for the pending applications.
Okay, Councilmember Dugan, do you want to change your motion at all?
I think we originally, we had that discussion, and then we went back to the point where we just want to do the $2 million for the rental and not the other $2 million, and we were going to leave that other $2 million for the future discussions with the rest of the budget. So I will modify my motion to say, I move that the council continue the public hearing to a future date and adopt item E1 as in the Treasury Emergency Rental Assistance Program, additional resources of $2 million for the Salt Lake City tenant rental assistance through the Utah Rental Relief Program, period.
Is there a second?
Second.
I just want to make sure there isn't also a timeliness concern about not doing the other 2 million for sure. This isn't like in an hour we're like, actually, okay, great.
Any further discussion on the motion? I have a motion by Councilmember Dugan, a second by Councilmember Mono. Any other discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes 7-0. Sorry, turn the page. Our next public hearing is item B2, and it is regarding amending the zoning text pertaining to the use of landscape materials. Before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Mr. Sam Owen, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction. Sam?
Thanks, Madam Chair. State and regional rebate programs reimburse property owners for replacing lawns with drought-appropriate landscaping. Salt Lake City property owners extensively use these rebate programs. Those programs are changing requirements. The changes include requiring eligible cities to adopt zoning amendments reducing allowed grass lawn on residential lots. The zoning amendment is proposed to keep the city eligible with these rebate programs so that Salt Lake City residents can access the rebates. The two main programs are currently available through the State Department of Natural Resources and the Central Utah Water Conservancy District, which covers everybody in Salt Lake. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Taylor, we can start with our first commenter.
Madam Chair, there are two people here to speak to this item. The first will be Jen Colby, followed by Margaret Holloway. Jen, you are unmuted.
Hello, this is Jen Colby, District 4. Given the time frame, I do support the revisions as drafted, especially as we are facing not only a climate emergency, but the reality that we live in a high mountain desert. It's important to bring the zoning rules in alignment with the DNR and the Water Conservancy District so that we do still qualify for the grants. That's terrific. However, as the larger landscape modifications go forward, I am concerned about several details and hope that these can be incorporated into the wider regulations in the future. Specifically, types of turf are not distinguished, and there are actually some really good low water turfs. I think that needs to be recognized and supported Artificial turf is not turf. It is a chemical product that highly elevates soil temperatures, sterilizes soil, and contaminates our landscapes and should be banned. Rock mulch is a real problem. The size should be specified. It should not be allowed in park strips or front yards. It drifts terribly into sidewalks, into streets, into bike lanes, and is a hazard for many. It could also, in the wrong sizes, be used unfortunately, in civil unrest. And the Zeroscape in front of the UTA hub is a good example of what we do not want to see. I'm seeing too many people replaced with just large swaths of rock with no plantings and nothing, and it will just raise the temperatures and exacerbate our heat island problems in the city. So that really needs to be carefully looked at. Finally, the golf exemption is a problem for me. Active recreation areas should be defined as minimum necessary for fairways, not the entire areas. Our golf system is a chronic problem in water waster. And I would say focus on water wasters and make sure we have social and economic justice in the regulations going forward. Thank you.
Next will be Margaret Holloway, who is here in person to speak.
She covered that extremely well. I took the WaterWise program, the class that you have to take in order to qualify for the rebate. It seems for the parking strip, you have to plant specific plants. And to me, it's a way, it seems like, well, that's the only way you can keep from watering that area. All you have to do is not water it, and it's all going to die off. And it's just like, well, we don't want to waste water, so we all have to get paid to flip our strip. And that's totally not true, because you just don't water it, and it dies. There's no reason to water it, okay? I understand they want beautification, but then you come in with the rocks, okay? And the rocks around the trees, then they don't water the trees, and then the trees get heated up because of all the rocks. I put mulch in mine with logs on top. And they told me that was unacceptable, that I had to have living things growing in there. And I said, I don't want living things, I have a tree. I want to water the tree. And they said, well, you got to get rid of the logs. So the city was always trying to get me to get rid of the logs. And I said, no, that's my spot to put logs. So when she's mentioning the rocks, you can't pull weeds out of rocks. And so all you do is see all these weeds. And I said, you can pull weeds out of mulch, but you can't pull them out of rocks very easily. And it's an eyesore. So it's worse than just don't water it and keep it mowed or whatever. And it's called no money. Just don't do it. But she hit it right on the nail. Thank you.
That was a final registered commenter for this item.
Madam Chair.
Thank you to our commentators. It's okay. I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future meeting.
I have a motion by Councilmember Pui. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Councilmember Dugan. Is there any discussion on this? No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 7-0. Our next public hearing item is B3, and that is regarding the right-of-way permit notification fee. Before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Sylvia Richards, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction. Good evening, Sylvia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The administration is proposing to add a new fee to the consolidated fee schedule for the cost of notifying adjacent property owners and residents when work is being done in the public right-of-way. The administration, currently the city is not recovering the cost of mailing postcards to the adjacent property owners and residents. And the administration has asked for the council to actually continue the public hearing to a future date in order to provide a new transmittal and an updated ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Taylor, we can begin with comments.
Madam Chair, there is no one registered for this item.
Excellent. In that case, I will look for a motion. Council members.
Madam Chair, I move that the council continue the public hearing to a future date.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Dugan, a second by Councilmember Mono. Any discussion on this? No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 7-0. Thank you. Our next public hearing item is item B4 regarding the Glendale Regional Park Plan. Before we begin taking comments, I'll turn the time over to Allison Rowland, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a hearing on the potential adoption of the Glendale Regional Park Plan, which would repurpose the 17-acre site of the former Glendale Water Park. The plan's goals are to provide the guiding vision and design for the future park, to establish a framework for development and programming at the park, and to create a park that serves the neighborhood, as well as having amenities that create a regional attraction. Like most plans, the Glendale Regional Park Plan sets out aspirations for full park build-out, but the funds for many of the features and activities have not yet been identified. Excuse me. As in similar plans, full implementation of the plan will be contingent on funding availability, and you are scheduled for potential action on this item on March 21st.
Thank you, Allison. Taylor, we can begin with our first comment.
Madam Chair, there are 6 people here to speak to this item. The first will be Sarah Erb, followed by Margaret Holloway, and then Mark Gasser. Sarah, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I live on 900 West. We have a child with a disability. She's blind, and we are excited to hear about the park and to see what will happen in our neighborhood. I also work on the other side of where the park will be going in. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to have this in our area. Just a reminder that this park would be for everyone, not just for those on the west side. And I wanted to mention kind of the elephant in the room that has been kind of a dialogue in our family with living so close to the Jordan River Parkway Trail. Is there with the transient population? We frequent the trail often and also use our bikes to ride around in the area. I would like to hear more discussion on what the plan would be to have something like businesses along the River Parkway Trail and to decrease the transient population from occupying what would be the park. So thank you so much for your time and for all you're doing for our community.
Next will be Margaret Holloway, followed by Mark Gasser, and then Dustin Reed. Margaret is here in person.
I have to tell you, we are so excited for this. We have been looking forward to this. The only thing I ask is Mayor Becker took out $4 million out of the park fund when he was mayor, and he never put it back, and the parks went downhill. It was bonded for that. We passed it, we approved it, and he took it out. We do not want that to happen this time because we passed this huge bond for doing this. We are so excited to get this, plus the other parks all deserve their other pieces too. And we just want it built, but we want it built like it's promised and not just, oh, well, we'll wait 5 more years, we'll wait 5 more years. It's got to be done. It's got to be done like quick because otherwise people won't believe and won't vote for anything else again because they're like, well, you promised it. But we're so excited for this and can't wait to see because it's going to be really nice. We hope. I know it will. Thank you.
Next will be Mark Gasser, followed by Dustin Reed, and then Soren Simonson. Mark is here in person.
Yes, thank you for allowing us to speak. In alignment with the one Glendale plan completed in 2021 and 22 community engagement for the Glendale Regional Park, we would like to amend the plan to meet both the needs of players of tennis and pickleball enthusiasts. With the energy around pickleball growing and the Glendale community now having a team, their own pickleball team, we realize you've planned to add the construction of 6 pickleball courts in the next phase. First phase, of course, as you know, design is already underway for the parking area and playground. We encourage you to save the construction expenditure of 6 new pickleball courts to simply convert 4 of the existing tennis courts to pickleball courts. All surrounding communities have pickleball court facilities, and we're encumbering on their pickleball use on their courts. We believe we should have our own courts. Thank you.
Next will be Dustin Reed, followed by Soren Simonson, and then Aoife Matuiki. Dustin is here in person.
Hello, I'm Dustin Reed. Some of you know my wife and I just bought the rides at Liberty Park 8 months ago, and I just wanted to come and speak on this issue because it's very important. I feel like we all have to take the city parks very serious. Every great city in the world that I can think of is associated with an amazing park. It's where we nurture our hope. We should have people enter a park with hope and leave with inspiration, knowing that they can pass it on. In the last 8 months, I've seen a park that I grew up in as a little kid that was really taken over by not just homeless, but homeless running their own show and getting mischievous beyond belief. Yet our community still walks through that park and enjoys it every day. Right out of the gate, I just made myself present, really care. Spent 2 months talking to the homeless before I ever put a key in the door, finding out their issues. And I tell you, the most important things were brought up in your work session today. You need to have a concessionaire in your park. You really need to have people that really care, because I'm out to preserve the history on rides that they're so important. We're losing them in the world, and this is what Walt Disney came up with, his dream, his vision, and we all live by that code. And I tell you, there's things you could do. The swimming pool, yeah, it's such a small percentage of the year that we open it. People love the water. I grew up as a kid knowing Raging Waters was my water play zone. Why don't we look at drilling geothermal, see if we can heat it? Why don't we look at expandable roof system where we can do more year-round? There's features, benefits. Lastly, I feel like if we provided a stage where people can grow and affordably perform our kids' students, we're set. Thank you.
Next is Soren Simonson, followed by Aoife Matuiki. Soren is here in person.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address you, and I appreciate the efficiency of having Jordan River items all on the same agenda. I'm here in my official capacity as the Executive Director of the Jordan River Commission, and just want to speak in favor of this master plan. We've had the opportunity to have some involvement in the planning effort and are so excited to see this development. And while I'm most interested in what's happening with the river access and the restoration, as a designer and planner who's worked on many parks around the state, I'm just excited to see this kind of park being developed in Salt Lake City. This will be a great benefit to the community. I know this is a high-level master plan, and I just want to include in the record for those with the Parks Division that will be eventually implementing elements of this plan, just a reminder about some things that I think are really important about the river access. First of all, the current boat launch at the marina that's there now is used for occasional water rescue. And so looking at how access can be provided for different kinds of watercraft that are used for training by our emergency services is important to maintain. Second of all, we do use that access to the river extensively with the community and volunteers to do a lot of cleanup and conservation work in the Jordan River. And we're so grateful for the hundreds of volunteers that come out every year. Having a parking area, in addition to the drop-off, that we can put trailers and boats and gear and things like that, is really critical to being able to host volunteers there. So those are just a couple of things that I want to remind you are critical to the design of this, to make sure that those important functions continue to be possible. Thank you, and I encourage you to work towards implementing this. We're very grateful for the citizens of Salt Lake City for approving the bond that will make it possible. Thank you.
Next will be Aoife Matuiki, who is here in person.
Hello, everybody. Okay, my name is Ifa Mutoliki, live in Glendale for over 43 years. And I just heard from Mark talk about pickleball court in Glendale. I understand that there will be 6 pickleball courts. But as you all know, that pickleball is the most, how do you call it? Super or way better than any sport in the world right now. Okay? So I'm here to ask you, City Council. I live in Glendale. I requested to build the tennis court, and you guys did it. And I am here tonight to request to you to have more pickleball courts in Glendale. We travel all over the city to play, and the reason why, because we don't have pickleball courts in our area. I play tennis. That's my life, playing tennis. And when the pickleball comes, I quit playing, not really quit playing tennis. I still playing tennis, but pickleball is #1 right now. I have 77 people playing pickleballs. And I have 25 to 27 children teaching them to play pickleball. They love. This is family activities. And I'm telling you, as I travel around and I look at our tennis court over here, empty. You know, sometimes I started to cry because I requested that. So I love you guys, and I hope that you guys accept this. Pickleball court, #1 sport in the world right now. Thank you. Love you all.
That was the final registered commenter for this item.
Great. Thank you, Taylor, and thank you to our commentators. I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a later date.
I
Second.
have a motion by Councilmember Pui, second by Councilmember Dugan. Any discussion on this? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? That passes 7-0. Our next public hearing, whoops, I turned my microphone off. Our next public hearing is item B5, and it is regarding the North Point Small Area Plan. Before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Brian Fulmer, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction. Brian, floor is yours.
Madam Chair, the North Point Small Area Plan is a land use plan for the land located between the Salt Lake City International Airport and the northern boundary of the city along the 2200 West Corridor. The updated plan will provide guidance on existing and anticipated development in the area, as well as annexation-related issues. As part of the plan update, the Salt Lake City Major Streets Plan will be amended to reflect recommended roadway alignments. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Taylor, we will begin with our first comment, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It looks like there are about 63 people here to speak to this item. The first will be Dean Dinas, followed by Thea Brennan, and then Ella Meyer. Dean is here in person.
Can't hear you.
Who was our first person, Taylor? Sorry.
Dean.
Dean Dinas.
Dina?
Yep. Come on down. The price is right.
And thank you for your service. I'm here 30 years from Brooklyn, New York. I'm a business economist, and I work with heavy industry for a few years here, and I've seen the developments going on in the Northwest Quadrant. I'm sorry to say, as a business economist, the recent clustering of warehouse and distribution is a ticking toxic time bomb waiting, and we've already seen the toxic dust released. Well, the EPA, federal, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are already aware of this. We know there's an existing Great Salt Lake adjacent business cluster already that is not being monitored for water and air at the county level, and their permits, and I've heard this personally and I've read it personally, are not being monitored and regulated and enforced, so that we're going to add more to this. They're not in compliance. We need to have more compliance and accountability before we add any more activities. Are we asking for any environmental impact statements from these businesses? Are we substituting warehouse for telecall centers? We used to have telecall centers here. Now we're substituting them with warehouse, low-wage, low-skilled jobs. Where are the assembly, small, simple, light manufacturing jobs that are paying more and that are greater in demand? And where is the Salt Lake strike team, city council, and county interaction that would help to ameliorate the situation and mitigate problems that we have currently and anticipated problems ahead? Thank you very much.
Next will be Thea Brannon, followed by Ella Meyer, and then Megan O'Brien. Thea, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I would just like to speak against this North Point development. We do not need more warehouses or maybe even small manufacturing. I'm not even sure that would appear there. I believe that most of it would be turned into warehouses with concomitant increase in traffic along, I forget what west it is, something 2200, 5222 or whatever. I drove out there myself. I saw how it is a sort of a semi-rural, really kind of funky area. I mean, why can't we have funky areas where there's just open land? I mean, open land is precious at this point. Why do we have to pave everything over and have buildings everywhere? We can't have untrammeled growth. It's not right, and we should not be seeking that or promoting it. And it's right next to the wetlands for the Great Salt Lake, which is in dire shape anyway. And I really think you should just can this whole idea. Thank you very much.
And next will be Ella Meyer, followed by Megan O'Brien, and then Joan Gregory. Ella, you are unmuted.
Hi, my name is Ella. I moved to Salt Lake City about 2 months ago from Southern California, where both water and air are really huge public health priorities. And the main reason that these became priorities was that over the last 2 decades, open land and residential areas had been converted into a sea of warehouses, literally visible by space, brought in by companies like Amazon and Skechers, etc. And with all these diesel trucks and distribution planes coming in and out of these warehouses, they really worsen traffic, air quality, cancer rates, and chronic health problems in the region, as well as really cemented poverty there due to the little job security that this industry provided. So moving to Salt Lake City, I knew that the water crisis was really extreme in influencing the air quality. But what I didn't necessarily expect to see was the same frightening pattern of warehouse expansion that really threatens both air quality, water, and ultimately people. It's incredibly disturbing to me, honestly, to see this happening here. And we know that these warehouses in particular will impact the Great Salt Lake wetlands and rezone a residential area in what is already a housing scarce landscape. Warehouse developers have immense political and monetary power to override environmental objections to these projects. And I ask you to please don't let this happen to this region as well. If you truly care about addressing the water and air issues related to the Great Salt Lake, this decision matters. Stand with the people and the environment, do what's right, and oppose the North Point warehouse development. Thank you.
And next will be Megan O'Brien, followed by Joan Gregory, and then James Maryland. Megan, you are unmuted.
Good evening, council members. My name is Megan O'Brien. I'm a co-founder of OCC Industrial, which currently has 12 acres of land under contract for purchase within the North Point Small Area. I'm here tonight to document my support for the North Point Small Area Plan, and specifically this area's transition to light industrial future land use. I've been working with numerous landowners in the North Point Small Area for a year now, and one thing is abundantly clear. The majority of the landowners in this area do support this area transitioning to light industrial. And how do I know this? Well, here's what I know. The North Point Small Area Plan is comprised of 1,345 acres of land. 25% of that land is publicly owned, primarily by the airport. The other 75% of that land is privately owned. And of that privately owned land, 57% is already zoned industrial. The other 43% is zoned agricultural, and of the agricultural landowners, 50% of them have signed a petition in support of the plan or have signed an annexation application with a request for industrial zoning. So when you put all of that together, 84% of the land in this area is publicly owned, already zoned industrial, owned by people that support the industrial future land use designation. 84%. The city has done a great job at putting this plan together, and that will allow for sustainable and responsible development in this area. Please expeditiously approve this plan on 3/21 as currently scheduled. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Next will be Joan Gregory, followed by James Carolyn, and then Lisa Manuel. Joan, you are unmuted.
Thank you. The North Point area is a unique and sparsely developed area, including 60 homes, businesses, and agricultural land, and is adjacent to some of the highest functioning wetlands of Great Salt Lake. Planning for the area needs to focus on preserving wetlands and the quality of life for residents there. Before the draft North Point Small Area Master Plan is adopted, the Salt Lake City Council needs to take a step back and work with the administration, Salt Lake County, the state, federal government to provide comprehensive planning and protection for the high-functioning wetlands in that area. It's time to stop, to pause, to take a long, hard look at what we are doing. Do we really want more warehouses? Do we really want to jeopardize more wetlands, more homes, and more communities to make room for more warehouses? Is it in the public's interest to dedicate more of the land within our city to warehouse development while we are facing the acute impact of climate emergency and the dying of Great Salt Lake? I say no. No to more pollution, no to more warehouses. Instead, protect this community, protect this land, protect these wetlands. Complete a comprehensive analysis of how to protect the shoreline of Great Salt Lake, comprehensively examine the market for warehouse development and the public health consequences of that development. Don't sacrifice our Great Salt Lake, our wetlands, our lungs, our communities, our future to warehouse development. We can change course. We can create the more viable, breathable, more equitable, and sustainable community we want to be. This future is within our grasp if we only pause and step back. Thank you.
Next will be James Carolyn, followed by Lisa Manuel, and then Sherry Barton. James, you are unmuted. James, we're not hearing any audio from you, so we will move on to Lisa and then return to James. Lisa, you are unmuted.
Good evening. I am Lisa Manuel from District 4. Within 10 years from now, the damage associated with the current version of the North Point Small Area Master Plan will become starkly apparent, should the plan be approved. The vote on this plan is a serious responsibility. Zoning this area close to the Great Salt Lake for warehouses would create irreparable harm with no cap on the number of warehouses allowed. I suspect, given the low level of existing infrastructure and the remote location, that providing city services to the area would amount to corporate welfare on the city's dime. Also, many warehouse workers are likely to be low-paid temps who need bus service and some sort of state or federal assistance to meet health care and other needs. Therefore, destroying fragile wildlife habitat, depleting water resources, and fouling the air do not make a fair exchange for the probable net financial loss that this rezone may bring. If there is a genuine need for more warehouses, the city has other areas already zoned for that purpose. Thank you.
Next will be Sherry Barton, followed by Denise Cartwright, and then Caleb Prusso. Sherry, you are unmuted.
Thank you. 30 years ago, my mother and father moved out to the area to retire. They moved there for the reasons of wildlife, the beauty, at the wetlands, the birds, the duck club, all of those reasons. My mother we lost my father 3 years ago, and my mother is 88 years old. She was approached by some real estate developers and where they tried to coerce her into signing a document for rezoning. She loves her home. She loves the area. It's close to her family and friends. It would devastate her to have to move out of that home that she's been in for 30 years. The area has changed significantly. I go with and take her to lunch weekly. There are huge dump trucks driving down the road where we used to see bicycle riders. There are trucks with dust. There's all kinds of hazards along the road, and it needs to stop. And I really think that someone needs to find a human side in this, because she is a kind, sweet, loving lady who really doesn't have other options. I say no to the North Point small project.
Next will be Denise Cartwright, followed by Caleb Prusso, and then Jen Colby. Denise, you are unmuted.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. I'm Denise Cartwright. I'm a local small business owner, and I have serious concerns about this project and about Great Salt Lake and its wetlands and the harmful repercussions of an additional warehouse development in Salt Lake City. Considering the dire state of the lake and the wildlife that depend on it, I think it's crucial that we tread very lightly and that we consider the long-term effects of that this project could have on such fragile ecosystems. I think we need to press pause on this project and more rigorously evaluate the consequences for the lake, the land, and the humans that reside on it. Thank you.
Next will be Caleb Prusso, followed by Jen Colby, and then Ken Kraus. Caleb, you are unmuted.
Hi, thank you. There's a proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. and the second best time is now. And 20 years ago was the time that the Salt Lake Valley needed to take serious action on sustainable development, on equitable development, and in caring for our unique and sometimes fragile ecosystem in the area. And leadership in the state and the county and the city has failed to do so repeatedly for many years. And since we didn't start 20 years ago, the time to start is now. And I advise a strong reconsideration of this plan. Thank you very much.
Next will be Jen Colby, followed by Ken Kraus, and then Lynn DeFrictus. Jen, you are unmuted.
Yes, Jen Colby, District 4. I concur with the other opponents of this plan, and I ask you to please send this back to the drawing board. It is not ready to be voted on in 2 weeks, and it is a terrible mistake doubling down on poor rezoning decisions under the Anderson administration, specifically around business parks and the distribution uses. I concur that we have far too much already zoned for distribution, and the costs and consequences are not balanced against any potential benefits we might see as a community. I have very personal experience with this. When I first moved to Salt Lake, which I swore I would never do due to the air quality 20 years ago, and I'm considering fleeing at any minute now, I took a job with the Forest Service. Unfortunately, it happened to be at the International Center. I ask that you all go out and spend some time driving around the International Center right now. It is in such terrible shape. I left that job after 4 years. That's another story. But I still go out there periodically because, well, that got me involved with trap, neuter, return for feral cats, and there are still feral cats out there. The area is seas of empty parking lots, underutilized properties. It was supposed to be a big boon. The streets are complete disasters. Heavy trucks do much more damage than average cars, 400% more by some estimates under the generalized fourth power law. This is a net negative from air quality, for environment, for the lake. And just because sneaky developers have come in and convinced land rich and cash poor people with agricultural land that they would get a big windfall doesn't mean this is the right thing to do. We do not need any more corporate welfare. We do not need any more areas like this. And I would have thought the inland port would have stopped. The experience with the inland port would have stopped this immediately. I ask that you say no to this and go back to the drawing board and preserve some of this land as open space. We have that bond now. We should spend some of that here. Thank you.
Next will be Ken Kraus, followed by Lynn DeFrictus, and then Annette McMullen. Ken is here in person.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the City Council tonight. My name is Ken Kraus, a resident of Salt Lake for the last 49 years. So when the tough gets going, the tough turn to Dr. Brian Mensch for quotes. And I quote, "Salt Lake City leaders are on the verge of turning one of our last natural oases into a pollution and traffic nightmare." Other states that have made the mistake of allowing these massive distribution warehouses to take over vast stretches of cities now refer to them as diesel death zones. Salt Lake City residents should be outraged at the prospect of doing that here. The land being targeted for this new warehouse development is adjacent to some of the most important and high-functioning wetlands on the south shore of the Great Salt Lake, which may be the last refuge for hundreds of bird species as Great Salt Lake experiences ecological collapse. I know other people will speak to this tonight. I'm looking forward to hearing their comments. And for the City Council, let me just finish with 3 words. Just say no. Thank you.
Next is Lynn DeFrictus, followed by Annette McMullen, and then Ren Griffith. Lynn is here in person.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Linda Freitas. I'm a resident of Salt Lake City, and I'm the executive director of Friends of Great Salt Lake, a nonprofit membership organization. Our mission is to preserve and protect the Great Salt Lake ecosystem through education, research, and advocacy. In our continuing work on behalf of the lake, one of the key threats to its ecological viability and ecosystem services has to do with the related impacts that come from development on and around the lake. As such, we rely on the integrity and implementation of planning tools that in principle and in practice will prevent arbitrary and capricious decisions. Believing in the integrity of planning tools like Plan Salt Lake that champions sustainable growth and development and includes minimize our impact on the natural environment as one of its guiding principles, we would expect the city to stand by what Plan Salt Lake and the community are advocating for. While we seem to accept the current development trends as a given, this development is devouring these important natural resources at an alarming rate. And it's crucial that we recognize the function these lands play as an essential part of the lake's ecosystem. While we can reverse the declining water levels in Great Salt Lake by diverting less water, there's no reversing the impact of development once the land is gone. The protections that we lose with these conversions are many, including water quality, protection against flooding, invasive plants and animals, and human trash of varying degrees. This loss directly threatens portions of the lake's ecosystem that are critical refuges at a time when the lake is under stress. Although the North Point plan is characterized as a small area plan, the significance of this unique landscape has huge implications for important agricultural properties, an existing residential community, open space, and conservation properties that comprise it. Thank you.
Next is Annette McMullen, followed by Ren Griffith, and then Dorothy Owen. Annette is here in person.
Hello. I am a fifth-generation Utah. My great-great-grandfather in Orem, Utah, put in his name for a parcel when it was just sagebrush. And I've been here my whole life and watched the traffic, the congestion, the loss of water, the loss of diversity, the pollution, and just the tornado of growth that's happening here. And there's this chance that we can lose the Great Salt Lake, and the Great Salt Lake depends on our choices, not a developer. I say no to the development of the North Point, say no to the developers of the warehouse. All that's going to do is cause more grief, more pain, more heartbreak to the residents and the citizens of Utah. David Attenborough talks about the biodiversity. We are connected to this planet, to everything. Once the biodiversity diminishes, and it's diminishing greatly, we go that way also. Thank you. I ask you to say no.
Next will be Ren Griffith, followed by Dorothy Owen, and then Cindy Cromer. Ren is here in person.
Hi, my name is Ren Griffith. Thank you for the opportunity. I am here to speak firmly against the proposed warehouse rezoning of the North Point small area. Economic development and progress are good things, but this is not the time or the place. From public health, economic, and environmental standpoints, the last thing we need in northern Utah is yet another warehouse district. According to a landmark study published by BYU this year, Great Salt Lake, our namesake, could be completely gone within 5 years without drastic intervention. This proposed development is much too close to the lake for comfort. Please do not allow another nail to be placed in the coffin of the Great Salt Lake. This is an already fragile ecosystem. These developers either don't know or don't care about the peril of the lake, and that the land surrounding it acts as a natural sponge to protect against droughts and dwindling water levels. Imagine the lake as a funnel. The closer you get to the bottom, the faster it goes. We need every inch of wetland and as much of the surrounding landscape as possible to be preserved, especially until the lake is stable so that it can help buffer against the funnel draining completely. The drying lake bed will release arsenic, lead, and other toxic chemicals into our air. A brine shrimp industry that produces 45 million tons of seafood globally will disappear. Millions of migratory birds who depend on the lake as their only stopover will perish, and it will affect yields from the crops that they help to seed across the globe. The rest of the world is watching as the situation unfolds. Furthermore, these developers also either don't know or don't care about the air quality in Utah, which has been shown in quality, published, and peer-reviewed scientific research to cause immense suffering to the people who live here. We live in an area that reliably and regularly experiences inversions, and we cannot continue to emit more pollution here. Would you, City Council members, really approve of something that will worsen the air quality, knowing that Utah residents currently lose literal years of precious time on this planet and with loved ones because of the level of pollution that we breathe? Would you, knowing that on unhealthy air days, women in northern Utah are up to 16% higher chance of suffering a spontaneous loss of pregnancy, and that people are notably more likely to take their own lives on these days? The developers either don't know or don't care, but you all know, and I'm asking you to care. Many of you in this room of this governing body claim to have concerns for the health and well-being of the people who live here, and actions speak louder than words. This is an opportunity for you all to show that you prioritize your constituents and the people who live here above the few who would stand to profit from this project. Thank you.
Next will be Dorothy Owen, followed by Cindy Cromer, and then Jack Ray. Dorothy is here in person.
Come on, Dorothy. My name is Dorothy Owen, and I am with the West Point Community Council, which is the community that houses the North Point. This master plan is a rare opportunity to seriously impact longstanding critical issues, impacting many jurisdictions, stakeholders, and residents. Less than 50% of this area is under the jurisdiction of Salt Lake City. Most of the land is in unincorporated Salt Lake County. That alone tells you that this is not your usual city planning process. This is not just a unique piece of land that's very sensitive, it's a unique governmental, political, administrative problem that needs to be resolved by joining many, many interests to resolve the issues. In addition to, juxtaposed to this area is North Salt Lake, Davis County, the state of Utah's Inland Port Authority, the International Airport, the Great Salt Lake, the Jordan River, and a few private duck clubs. With all of these interested parties, impacted parties, we need a very encompassing, broad planning perspective. And that's what we were hoping we would get with the $100,000 that Salt Lake City appropriated for the consulting firm. Unfortunately, we haven't received that yet. That what you paid for, you haven't yet received. But that doesn't mean that we're at a loss at this point. We can do better, and we ask that you do. At this point, we need to not continue the silo perspective that the current plan embraces, but instead adopt a more encompassing approach. And as a result, we ask you to pause, not pause just to take more time, but to do the work necessary to develop a legacy plan of which all of us would be proud to be a part of. Thank you.
Next is Cindy Cromer, followed by Jack Ray, and then Heidi Hoven. Cindy is here in person.
Of course, I had this prepared for 1 minute and 59 seconds, but in light of the number of people speaking, I'm going to send you my comments. They're based on my 40 years of experience with small area master plans. I've worked on 12. This is number 12. And I've come to some conclusions about what makes an effective one. This one cannot be effective, sadly. But I want to draw your attention to the loss, ultimately, of over 60 single-family residences. I've never worked on a zoning issue where we lost that kind of family-oriented housing ever. Shopko took out about 43 in Sugar House. I do want to thank the mayor publicly. I want to thank her for intervening following the Planning Commission's recommendation regarding distribution centers. That was extraordinary to dismiss the planning staff's recommendation. And I had to go back to the DePaulis administration, that's Palmer DePaulis' administration, to come up with a similar intervention from our mayor. Thank you.
And next is Jack Ray, followed by Heidi Hoven, and then Margaret Holloway. Jack is here in person.
Thank you. My name is Jack Ray. I'm here on behalf of Rudy Reclamation. We own land that's immediately adjacent to the North Point small area that this plan relates to. It's just across, it's just to the west on 3200 West. What happens with that plan is going to have a significant impact on us. We have owned and nurtured and stewarded that land for well over 100 years. We've preserved it as wildlife habitat when everyone around us wanted us to do something different. We've preserved considerable water rights to ensure that the waterfowl and other migratory birds have a place on their migration to go through. It's a land of tremendous ecological productivity. It's a land of tremendous beauty. And our concern is that what happens with this plan is going to hollow out many of the natural characteristics and many of the natural value that this land has. The migration northward, the spring migration, is currently underway. And this land is providing critical resting and feeding habitat for all of the birds that are on their way north right now. Many of those birds will continue on to Canada. They will continue on to Alaska, north of the Arctic Circle, but many of them also will stay on our property, and they're choosing their nesting sites. And if there is a sea of industrial development on the other side of the street from us, it's going to have a significant impact. We're committed to the future of this land. We're committed to carrying on the stewardship that's been carried on by generations before us for over 100 years. But we don't want that stewardship to be compromised by decisions that are made in short-term interests. And so we ask the City Council to consider those values. 3200 West, among other things, should remain unpaved and gated in a way that allows people to walk and bike as they do now and to enjoy looking out across those wetlands. There should be greater mitigation and buffering for the wetlands. You can't camouflage a 1 million acre square foot warehouse. And the birds are going to recognize that. It's sensitive to that kind of activity. And so we would ask the council to take those matters into consideration. Thank you.
Next is Heidi Hoven, followed by Margaret Holloway, and then Will Channel. Heidi is here in person.
Hello, my name is Dr. Heidi Hoven with Audubon Rockies at Gilmore Sanctuary. I am a wetland ecologist by training and have become an avian ecologist and conservation biologist through my 24 years of work at Great Salt Lake Wetlands. I believe you are aware that of the dire circumstances of the collapsing Great Salt Lake ecosystem, driven by drought and water development. Managed wetlands of the lake have become increasingly more important in sustaining the millions of birds that depend on the lake each year. I submitted comments to you March 3rd, 2023, with my partners from Friends of Great Salt Lake, the Jordan River Commission, and Utah Waterfowl Association. The comments include newly created maps with current information that show how close Great Salt Lake wetlands already are to the North Point area. They also illustrate the concept of a shoreline heritage area that protects wetlands and uplands of Great Salt Lake and traditional land uses. This concept has already been adopted by Great Salt Lake County in the West General Plan in 2022. We urge you to take the time needed to develop conservation development tools, such as TDRs, to maintain open space adjacent to these wetlands, while enabling landowners to realize the financial values of their property. We urge you to partner with the state and Salt Lake County to develop such programs. We also urge you to implement the use of other land conservation tools in the remaining North Point area to maximize open space and minimize harmful impacts to people and birds. I ask that you request environmental and traffic impact analyses for the North Point Plan area to guide wise decisions for residents and wildlife together. The city already has identified the values these open lands provide in Plan Salt Lake and lays out guidelines to prevent habitat fragmentation and other habitat loss practices. This is your opportunity to follow these principles and protect the namesake of our city. Thank you.
Next will be Margaret Holloway, followed by Will Channel, and then Carson Kroc. Margaret is here in person.
What's interesting is the people that are speaking are all against this. I think there was like 2 that are for it. At the zoning, there was 2, the purchaser of the land, the real estate agent and the gentleman that was selling it. It sure shows how we don't want this, okay? And it's only a small piece of land. But I was told that, well, we want to bring quality jobs out there, and quality, and I said, what about the airport? What about the prison? What about UTA? There is no transit out there. You're going to have people driving 24/7 up and down that Farmer Road all night long. There's no transport, so everybody's going to have to drive. You don't know what you're going to get, and there's quality jobs all around this city that can't be filled, cannot be filled, because there aren't quality people to do them. And if you don't believe me, call the hiring agencies. I did a poll today on Facebook, on Rose Park Facebook, and that's what I heard. We can't get people to come to work. They sign up, they say they want to work, and they don't. But then they complain they don't get paid. Well, you got to go to work to get paid, and you got to go to work and prove yourself before you can get paid to get those extra jobs. Okay, so you want to put something out there, you don't have to. Why don't you wait until the 40 dock warehouse is done and see how they hire people out there, see how it works before you go and condemn the rest of this land. It's a small little piece of land that still can be left alone. We don't need the property tax. We don't need the jobs out there because they can go to the port. I was told to take our company that I work for that has been in business for 78 years that's at the north part of Salt Lake City. If we don't like it because we're getting crowded up by housing, we should go to the port. Why would we do that? We own it. We pay for it. We have good paying jobs, but we can't find people. Okay? Why should we have to go to the port when you're not making this company go to the port? Because they're an outside investor. They're not from Utah. They're not bringing this company from Utah. Why not? Because it's cheap land. They think they can get around. Thank you.
Next will be Will Channel, followed by Carson Kronk, and then John Schreck. Will is here in person.
Good evening, council members. My name is Will Channel. I'm one of 3 members of OCC Industrial. We are a newly formed real estate development company and currently have 12 acres in the North Point Small Area Plan under contract with landowners here this evening. I'm here tonight to document my support for the North Point Small Area Plan. The reasons why I support this plan is the plan provides sustainable development guidelines that will generate long-term growth in a manner that is respectful to the natural environment and the greater Salt Lake. Landowners in this area should have the right to choose what to do with their land, and they would be able to benefit from the long-term economic growth of this area. The land use updates support the planned Salt Lake Master Plan in the following ways. It supports redevelopment in the Salt Lake City International Airport and the surrounding areas, creates fulfillment centers, and support for growth in the industrial areas in the Salt Lake City. The land use update will support all 3 of these initiatives, allowing for additional industrial development, and will create new jobs, increase property tax revenue for the city, and bring critical new infrastructure to this area. Also, the lack of available industrial land in Salt Lake Market has led to a new construction not being able to keep up with demand. By doing so, this has increased rental rates on small businesses in this area by 21% over the last year. Small businesses are taking the brunt of the problem, and approving this plan will alleviate that for your community. The last reason I support the approval of this plan is this will allow the area to develop a sustainable industrial and manufacturing center that will generate high-paying jobs for Salt Lake City. I want to thank Nick Norris, Chrissy Gilmore, the staff. They've worked tirelessly on this plan, as the Planning Commission, as the City Council. So with that being said, I would please recommend you move expeditiously and approve this plan on March 21st. Thank you for your time.
Next is Carson Kronk, followed by John Schreck, and then Jan Ella Burton. Carson is here in person.
Hi, good evening, City Council. My name is Carson Kronk. I am a resident of Salt Lake City, as well as a representative of 2 families who own 14 acres within the North Point Small Area Plan. We support this plan, and we ask that you please approve the plan as scheduled on March 21st. We believe that this plan very well gives those who wish to stay in the area the buffers and proper design elements to do so. It also gives those who wish to participate in the economic growth of the area the opportunity to do that. Additionally, there are already over 2,000 protected acres of bare mudflats, seasonal wet meadow, deep marshes, and open water channels at the Legacy Nature Preserve, located just north of the North Point Small Area. The North Point Small Area does not have that same geography, and it is placed directly between multiple industrial parks, the Salt Lake City Airport, and most notably, the Scannell Industrial Development that is currently under construction within the North Point Small Area. Again, we wanted to voice our support for the North Point Small Area Plan and ask that you please approve the plan as scheduled on March 21st. Thank you.
Next will be John Schreck, followed by Jan Ellen Burton, and then Natalie Thompson. John is here in person.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is John Schreck. I am a resident of Salt Lake City, and I want to express my support for the North Point Small Area Plan. This plan is a great middle ground for both current residents that want to continue to stay, yet also leaves room for residents who are interested in selling their properties for future phases of development. Salt Lake City has already allowed industrial development to the south along 2100 North, to the east with I-215 and oil refineries along kind of the State Street area, and directly north across the Jordan River is a North Salt Lake City industrial park. And finally, a recent Salt Lake City approval of the construction of a 1 million square foot distribution building that runs along 2200 West. The North Point Small Area is now in the process of being completely surrounded by industrial developments. Facing these facts, some residents want to continue to stay. The North Point plan has not forgotten them. It calls for transitional zoning so that no resident will be forced off of their property and can stay as long as they like. But what about the residents that see what is coming across the street? What if they don't want to continue to live next to the ever-increasing industrial neighbor? What opportunities do they have? This is where we need you, counselors. Looking at the newest neighbors across 2200 West, isn't it only fair that each individual in the North Point Small Area be given the right to choose who they sell to? In this case, commercial development may afford them the best opportunity to be made whole on their property. Please approve the North Point Small Area Plan without restrictions on light industrial uses as scheduled on May 21st. Thank you so much.
Next, we'll hear from Jan Ellen Burton, followed by Natalie Thompson, and then Skylar Peterson. Jan is here in person.
Thank you. My name is Jan Ellen Burton, and I live in District 6. And I previously commented in opposition to the North Point Small Area Master Plan at the Salt Lake Planning Division. It's unimaginable to me that this proposal continues to go forward. The proliferation of warehouses already built on the site of the port are an ongoing reminder of the duplicity of this idea. I read the initial business plan for the port produced by UEPA, and other than the repetition of the word sustainable, there was nothing sustainable about the plan. I've heard that word many times today. 2 warehouse districts will overwhelm the plans the legislature has made for sustaining the lake. Those plans did not address the surge of pollution on the wetlands of the southern arm of the Great Salt Lake, which will surely result from the North Point project. City government can perhaps prevent this massive destruction. Other places in the U.S. are putting laws in place to stop warehouse devastation. Utah is a bit behind in that regard, but that does not mean that we need to accelerate the ecological collapse of the Great Salt Lake. I hear politicians talk about how we need high-paying jobs. Just Google Elmwood, Illinois, and you can read about the boondoggle the citizens there have faced at the site of the largest inland port in the U.S. Most of the workers are either temporary employees or are placed through temp agencies. Many people across the United States are eyeing the state of Utah, wondering how we can make such backward decisions, obviously in support of developers for whom greed displaces humanity. The city of Salt Lake has an opportunity to speak up for our state and lake. We can support the Shoreline Heritage Preservation Plan. We can say no to supporting public subsidies for infrastructure in regard to the zoning change. Finally, we can speak out for Utah being an environmentally friendly and protective state, which will support our biggest asset, the ecology of Utah. Thank you.
Next will be Natalie Thompson, followed by Skylar Peterson, and then Terry Morosco. Natalie is here in person.
Hi, I'm Natalie Thompson, and I live on the 2200 West corridor. In the thick of what's happening, I'm going to speak to what's happening, not what is going to happen. And I remain displayed at the Commission's disregard for the safety and lack of infrastructure on 2200 West. The amount of construction and heavy traffic on 2200 West is improper and unsafe on this narrow farm road. The noise and shaking are unbearable as huge dump trucks barrel down the road at 30 miles an hour and engage their brakes. While construction is unlikely to stop, the residents' concerns are valid and should be corrected and addressed. There cannot be safety without infrastructure on 2200 West, regardless of the area plan. Planning has turned its back on the opportunity to grow a vibrant community with this master plan, and instead, the plan shall fill it with warehouses. The Planning Commission seems most interested in encouraging displacement of current residents, ruining the flora and fauna of which there is abundance, and serve corporate interests. The city's support in diminishing our agricultural lifestyle, doubling down on the deterioration of air quality, and continuing loss of open space is distressing and disheartening. It's challenging to find comparable properties. Comparable and available properties would require significant expense, putting some of us out of proximity to jobs, and the level of discomfort during construction, noise, dust, ground shaking might force relocation. This might be pleasing to some and 100% devastating to others. If property owners' rights are to be considered first and foremost, remember the actual residents of this area. Your constituents live in North Point. Most of the properties taking precedence over our community are not occupied by people who live in the area. Most properties are developed, are owned by corporate businesses and land speculators, not residences. Thanks.
Next will be Skylar Peterson, followed by Terry Marasco, and then Nate Housley. Skylar is here in person.
My name is Skylar Peterson. I'm with Newmark Commercial Real Estate. I represent 9.95 acres located in the North Point small area. I'm here tonight to document my support for the master plan update. The reason I support this plan is a longtime commercial real estate agent. I'm a strong believer that industrial is a positive development in the area. I don't think majority of the people realize the vital role that industrial real estate plays in the community, from goods and services to employment and jobs. I'm asking you to truly think about how housing impacts your everyday life and to please approve this plan on March 31st. Thank you.
Next is Terry Marasco, followed by Nate Housley, and then Denise Payne. Terry is here in person.
Thank you. Terry Marasco. I live in Salt Lake City. I'm in the Jordan Meadows Community Council area. So over the years, we've heard from the administration, from the council, from many leaders about air quality issues. As a matter of fact, a number of years ago, when Erin was Erin and now she's the mayor, we were at a meeting of, I can't remember who, but we were sort of arguing about air quality issues. So this is going back many years. So as this rhetoric continues, we keep seeing industrial development that would depreciate air quality. But the other part of that is lifestyle. So the lifestyle of the North Point area and the rest of the city is under threat from this. I've heard mixed messages from government officials, no names, that warehouses are okay and high-paying jobs. You can't have both. They don't work together. Warehouses have very low-paying jobs. The other thing I hear is that Business Park is not acceptable, it's a relic, it's et cetera. However, Business Park affords the restrictions that community wants out there. So you need to really take a look at this whole idea. Maybe you should have a new ordinance that puts restrictions on this development. You already know what happened out there not too long ago. The developer did not get permits to run trucks and construction equipment. Developer had to know about that, didn't do it. As a matter of fact, today I saw a post from someone in town that got a citation for not having wide enough snow removal on their sidewalk. And yet developers are running rampant out there. So we need to contain all that. You need to really look at the big picture of what's happening out there compared to the rest of the city. Thank you.
Next Next is Nate Housley, followed by Denise Payne, and then Kath Larkin. Nate is here in person.
Hi, my name is Nate. I am here to encourage you to vote no against the current area plan as it stands. I would strongly encourage the City Council and the Mayor to do a comprehensive review of the shoreline as an area and really take a look at all the impacts that this kind of development would have on the nearby wetlands, on the air, which is already especially bad on the west side of Salt Lake City. And we need to know what the costs are before this kind of development should go through. So that's what I would ask for, and thank you for your time.
Next will be Denise Payne, followed by Kath Larkin, and then Trey Bordeaux. Denise is here in person.
Hi, I've been a resident on 2200 West since 1989, and I currently oppose the small area plan that they have before you. The Salt Lake Tribune recently had an article about the state launching a year of study and public input to understand how existing residents are being squeezed out by development, especially on the west side of Salt Lake. I don't feel it's realistic for residents to live with M1 surrounding their homes. The air traffic and noise pollution of M1 is not compatible with residential living. Not to mention 2200 West is crumbling from all the construction and current warehouse semi-traffic. The business park that is currently underway on the west side of 2200 West is being navigated by 3 different entities. Last fall, a representative for this development told us in a meeting that they plan to build another road on 2900 West to accommodate the traffic for this site, and there would only be a smaller road on 2200 West for necessity and safety. The majority of the residents at this meeting voted in favor of keeping the east side of 2200 West as residential and agriculture. I recently learned from the planning department that 2900 West actually belongs to Salt Lake County, so Salt Lake City is unable to enforce the road being built on 2900 West. I think this should have been discussed a long time ago. As a resident, and I'm asking you to postpone the master plan until all the entities involved can come together and work on this project. If it continues as is, you'll be forcing 60 residential homes with families to move or live in a dangerous area due to traffic, air, and noise pollution. Please take a step back and put any current or future rezoning requests in this area on hold and work together on a master plan. Salt Lake City needs more open space, parks, trails, less traffic, congestion, and air pollution. Thank you.
Next will be Kath Larkin, followed by Trey Bordeaux, and then Steve Starr. Kath, you are unmuted. Kath, we are unable to hear you, so I will message with you to troubleshoot, and we will move on to Trey Bordeaux, who is here in person.
Hello, City Council. My name is Trey Bordeaux. I am a Salt Lake City resident, currently living in Rose Park. I also represent 10 acres of land in the North Point small area. I'm here tonight to document my support for the master plan update. The reason I support this plan is because I believe landowners in the area should have the right to choose what to do with their land and maximize its value. I want to thank city staff, the Planning Commission, and City Council for all of your hard work. I ask that you please expeditiously approve this plan as scheduled on March 21. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Steve Starr, followed by Marcia Walk, and then Chris Jenkins. Steve, you are unmuted.
I really wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but after listening to everybody, I do want to say a couple things. I want to say thank you to the council for listening to everybody. Second, I'm a resident on 2200. I am under contract. With the development that has been happening out here for the last 7 to 8 years, I feel like we live in an area that is no longer what it used to be. My home prices are not going to go up. They're going to continue to go down. I have an offer on the table to where I can make a better life for me and my wife. It is my property, and like I have the choice to sell it to whoever I. So thank you. I'm in support.
And next is Marcia Walk, followed by Chris Jenkins, and then Gary Banford.
Hello? Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. This is Marcia. It's just Marcia. I'm plain and simple, Marcia Walk. And I am here to address the people, not the individuals, but the corporate people who come out for this plan. And especially one woman who mentioned all of these percentages of people who signed up. And what I'm going to tell you now has been verified by KSAL and the Salt Lake Tribune with interviews with homeowners. And these people developers have been going door to door and harassing people to get them to sign, tell them to either to sign up, to agree with it, or to sell their homes. And this is public record. This is harassment. And I don't think the city council wants to be involved with people like this. And so I am definitely against it. I have extended family that live on 2200 West, and it's a disaster right now. There's no infrastructure and those kinds of things. But it's the developers that are pushing this, and this needs to be junked right now. And over my dead body, I'm 78 years old, and you know what? I will chain myself to any kind of backhoe or whatever, and it'll save my kids the price of burying me. And if you don't think I won't do it, I will. And these warehouses are not going to happen. Thank you. I'm sorry, I got a little emotional.
Next will be Chris Jenkins, followed by Gary Banford, and then Nicole Solt. Chris is here in person.
My name is Chris Jenkins, and I represent a family who owns a little over 4 acres of land on 2200 West. And I'd like to thank the City Council and all the people involved with the city and all of the effort that's been made to be careful in their due diligence. I think they've done an incredible job of making sure that everyone's voices are heard and interests are taken into consideration. Thank you for that. These are private landowners, and the highest and best use of this land is within the master plan for the city. And I don't get to vote. Sorry, I'm trying to vote for it too. I am in favor of the North Point plan going forward and being done as what we're trying to do. You know, it's kind of crazy. You know all the things you're going to say before you get up here, and you sound so good in your heads, you know? Anyway, again, private landowners, and this is mostly east of 2200 West. I'm in relationship of the water, the environmental stuff. It's, again, east of 2200 West. So thank you so much.
Next will be Gary Banford, followed by Nicole Solt, and then Brad Auger. Gary is here in person.
I'll start off by saying thank you. It's unfortunately going to be a long night for you guys. So some would have you think that if I stood on my property in 2200 West and threw a rock, it would hit the Great Salt Lake. And that's just not the case. I love the Great Salt Lake, and I'm so excited that with the snowfall, it's already risen 2 feet, and it's expected to raise probably 6 more feet after runoff, and maybe even more than that. But so after I throw my rock, the first thing it's going to hit is all the trucks that are already currently developing the Swainer property. The next approximately 3.5 miles is airport, which I think also has a future plan to expand to the north. And then you have Farmington Bay, another about 3.5 miles, and then you reach the old shore of the Great Salt Lake. It's about another 7 miles to get to the new shore of the Great Salt Lake. So when my wife and I bought this property 2 years ago, we were so excited. We love the area, and we thought we're going to build a nice little home here and just, have a place for our family to come. And just in the last 2 years, the changes have been substantial to where I personally don't want to live there anymore. It was an exciting goal for me, but that's not going to be the case anymore. And the beauty of this the North Point Small Area Plan is that it gives everybody the freedom to do with their land what they want to do. If people want to stay, more power to them. If people want to move or sell, more power to them. So I'm in favor of this proposal so I can actually take the money that I invested for my future home and buy a different place where I can actually build or buy a new home with those funds. Thank you very much.
Next will be Nicole Salt, followed by Brad Auger, and then Rhonda Devereaux. Nicole is here in person.
Hi, my name is Nicole Solt. I am off of 2200 West, and I live east of 2200 West. Somebody was saying, we are just living in such yes, right now, horrible conditions because the current development that's going on without the proper permits, which is very upsetting because it just shows me what kind of disregard these developers have for our city, for residents, for the environment. When I left tonight, my son asked me where I was going, and I told him the city council meeting, and he said, good, because when I'm gone, I hope this is still here. And so the individuals that are for this current plan, yes, they are under contract. They're under contract for a lot of money. And I do feel bad for some of those individuals that are selling because they are in hard personal situations. Some of the developers say the whole purpose of destroying these precious wildlife and agriculture is to create more jobs. Well, we have businesses that are shutting their doors right now because they cannot find enough employees. I'm a small business owner. We cannot expand because we can't find employees. There's hiring jobs all over. There's already empty buildings. So why are we building more? So I'm against the current plan. I hope that we revise it to put the residents and the agriculture and all the wildlife into consideration. Thank you. I try to do 2 minutes and not cry. So thank you.
Next will be Brad Auger, followed by Rhonda Devereaux, and then Kyle McMullen. Brad's here in person.
My name's Brad Auger. I currently live in the North Point area, of 6 acres out there. It's a beautiful place. I'm here to document my support for the master plan update and some reasons why. One for me, landowners in this area should have the right to choose what to do with their land. There are many people commenting on this that don't even live out in the North Point area. Now that the building across from 2200 West are under construction, my future residential values are going down, 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 and so are yours. Let's stop lying to ourselves and realize that this whole area between 2200 West and 215 should be zoned to accommodate the airport with commercial zoning. Give me the ability to choose who I sell to. The reality is there will be lots of industrial development due to the Swanner project. And my land value should, economically should be higher if it's zoned industrial. I pay a lot in taxes because I own more than the standard third acre that most people have, or some. There's very few of them out there. When I tried to work with the city to build a home for my daughter years ago, shut right down, not going to do it. I was denied a few. I even tried to build a storage business on my 6 acres to create a great job for myself on land that was shut down by the zoning. Can't do it. So I continue to pay all these additional taxes on a large property to which I cannot utilize. And so, we're far away. We're far away from the Great Salt Lake. The wetlands are owned by gun clubs and do a great job.
Sorry, that's time.
Is that two?
Yep.
Okay,
thank you.
Next will be Rhonda Devereaux, followed by Kyle McMullen, and then Beth Battleberger. Rhonda is here in person.
Good evening. My name is Rhonda Devereaux. I live on the east side of I-215 where I own a farm directly adjacent to the properties that we're talking about. You've heard all of the good, bad, and ugly about the different properties and the air quality in the water and people who are for it and are against this. But what I want to say is you're our voted representatives to see into the future as to what is best for us as a larger community. And my little farm on Rose Park Lane it's my safe haven, but it's not everything. It's not everything that it is to everybody else. And we're dependent on you to make really smart choices for us and what happens with the land around us. And don't kid yourself, the air pollution and the water pollution affects us all the way into the city where I live. I said I don't live on the farm, I live in the city. And the air pollution and the water pollution affects where we live here in Salt Lake. It's not like North Point is some far place away that we don't really have to pay attention to. It has some great consequences if it isn't developed with having a complete understanding of the ecosystem. And so I highly would like to encourage you to put a pause on this and get some environmental impact studies done on what is going to happen. What is going to happen if those wetlands dry up? How is warehousing going to affect the wetlands that are just adjacent and serve as a very important buffer to the Great Salt Lake? And do it mindfully so we all benefit in the end with some smart decisions.
Time.
Thank you.
Next will be Kyle McMullen, followed by Beth Lattenberger, and then Malin Mensch. Kyle is here in person.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time to address you. You have a lot more patience than I do to sit here and put up with this nonsense. I am also a commercial real estate agent. I help the people that have been farming this ground for generations sell it. The reason they sold it was because they could no longer afford to farm within the city limits. One of the other sellers owned a nice little 5-acre piece that they had purchased to build their dream home. Had all the plans drawn and designed and came to get a building permit and were told, sorry, don't have sewer, don't have water, and so you can't have a permit. So they sat on the ground for years and included it in the sale to the property to the previous developer who was trying to do a residential development. Many of the people that are here tonight speaking against this development were talking negatively and trying to end the residential development. So they chose to have an area plan done in order to get something done that they would like. And unfortunately, they don't like what they got. And I don't know what to do about that. The property needs to be used. It needs to be put to use. If I had my druthers, it would be left as a nice alfalfa pasture because I like looking at the beautiful green. But that's not possible. It's just not possible. So tonight, I ask you to vote in favor, or vote on the 21st in favor of the area plan and make it possible for this property and these owners to move forward with their desires. Thank you.
Next is Beth Blattenberger, followed by Malin Mensch, and then Ann O'Connell. Beth is here in person.
My name is Beth Blattenberger. I live in Salt Lake City, and I care about the Great Salt Lake, as I hope you do too. We all know it's in trouble, and now's the time to think about how to make things better and not worse. There's already been a lot of unfortunate development in very close proximity to the lake. We don't have to keep going in that direction. We don't need the jobs. We need to think about how we can make beneficial use, not just for wildlife, but for the residents of that area and the entire wider area who enjoy the lake. When the prison was built, all of a sudden they realized there were mosquitoes out there and said, oh, now we need to spray for mosquitoes. We don't need more poison in the air. We need to think about all the consequences of what we're doing, all the things that we do need to make this area better. Please give it the thought that it deserves. Thank you.
Next will be Malin Mensch, followed by Ann O'Connell, and then Katie Pappas. Malin, you are now unmuted. Malin, we are not hearing you, so we will circle back and move on to Ann O'Connell, who is here in person.
All right, I'm Ann O'Connell. I live in the city in the 4th District. Many years ago, someone told me that in any other country in the world, the Great Salt Lake would be designated a national park. Of course, he knew no such thing would happen here. Instead, we have built an airport, a business park, a prison, and currently multiple warehouses. Now, Salt Lake City seems intent on building another business park or more warehouses. This is madness if you want to protect the lake, and probably also a very bad economic planning. Surely we have had quite enough of that. I'm sure you get the point that I'm speaking against the North Point plan. Instead, I hope that you will work with many other Salt Lake City residents who hope to create a true protective area for the lake. Thank you.
Next is Katie Pappas, followed by Holly Price Branford, and then Mary Whitaker. Katie is here in person.
Hi, thank you. My name is Katie Pappas, and I live in Salt Lake City District 3. Thank you for your meetings with us and for listening to our concerns about the North Point plan. I want to respond to a gentleman who commented a minute ago. I don't live in the North Point area, but I am concerned about the broader impacts this plan will have on the Great Salt Lake, the environment, and consequently all of us. The North Point area is a unique place with untapped potential. 60 homes in a once peaceful setting where small farms and livestock could still exist. Close proximity to high-functioning wetlands that contribute to the overall health of the Great Salt Lake and provide refuge for migrating birds. Open spaces that benefit both people and wildlife. It doesn't sound like a place you would want to commit to industrial development with its truck traffic, noise, air and water pollution, and health consequences for residents. Rather than push forward with this, I'm asking the city to pause and consider how this area could be used in a way that would benefit the future of the Great Salt Lake ecosystem, residents in the North Point, and in fact, the entire valley. With the cooperation of the city, Salt Lake County, and the state of Utah, we have a window of opportunity right now to take the steps needed to ensure the south shore of the Great Salt Lake is protected forever. And with other areas available for the development you seek and the tools at your disposal, we can preserve North Point as a desirable residential and open space area, not an industrial zone. Thank you.
Next will be Holly Price Banford, followed by Mary Whitaker, and then Tia Mitsminkos. Holly is here in person.
Hi, City Council. My name is Holly Price Bamford, and I own a little over 4 acres in the North Point small area. My husband and I were looking for a large property to build our dream home on a couple of years ago. When we drove through the area, we fell in love with the rural feel and felt like it was a right place for our family. Since then, there has been a lot of growth, and we decided to be involved in that growth. I am here tonight to show my support for the master plan update. There are several reasons I support this plan. First of all, landowners in this area should have the right to choose what they want to do with their land, and I would like to benefit from the long-time economic growth of this area. Second, I would be able to maximize my land value. The reality is there will be millions of square footage of industrial development due to the Swainer project, and my land value would be substantially higher if it were zoned industrial. Finally, because of this plan will allow this area to develop into an industrial and manufacturing center that will generate great jobs for Salt Lake City. Thank you to the city staff, planning commission, and city council for all your hard work and your patience tonight. Please expeditiously approve this plan. The update of the small area plan has been going on for over 3 years now, and I would greatly appreciate it if the city council would approve it as scheduled. Thank you.
Next is Mary Whitaker, followed by Tia Mitsminkos, and then Soren Simonson. Mary, you are unmuted. Mary, I will message with you, and we will move on to Tia, who is here in person.
Hi, my name is Dia. I live in Salt Lake City. I am very opposed to the North Point Small Area Master Plan. Everybody has already spoken to this already, but the Salt Lake is in a very precarious position on the brink of ecological collapse, and critical wildlife and human health are at risk with the pollution that's coming from the lake, and that's going to come with more development. So I say no. Please say no. Thank you.
Next is Soren Simonson, followed by Eric Orme, and then Morena Grossman. Soren is here in person.
Thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to take a few more minutes of your time. My name is Soren Simonson. I'm the Executive Director of the Jordan River Commission, and I'm here in my official capacity. I'll try not to be redundant with other comments that have been made. Just wanted to, I think the staff will be handing out a few pages. One of them is this section of Plan Salt Lake. I was thinking some of you were on the council when this was adopted, but I realized reading the acknowledgments that you weren't, although the mayor was on the council at the time. So I wanted to provide this with you. Several people have referenced it. The goals of Plan Salt Lake specific to the natural world, I don't believe are adequately reflected in the current version of the North Point Small Area Plan. I want to share with you a handout of the plan map, the vision map that was developed by the steering committee that advised the planning staff in the early stages of the project. This map reflects really strong conservation goals, I think, that are very consistent with Plan Salt Lake. The current map, as it is in the current version of the plan, although I know there was some recommendations made by the Planning Commission, continues to reflect a vision for this area that I think is very inconsistent with Plan Salt Lake. There are some really amazing tools that are highlighted in the plan, transfer of development rights, other tools. We know that zoning is a poor way to preserve land, which I think is already apparent in development that wasn't consistent with the previous North Point Small Area Plan, but is moving forward. As has been highlighted, this is a hemispherically significant habitat area for wildlife, and putting the kind of development that's in the current version of the plan in this environmentally sensitive area is not only inconsistent with your plans for Salt Lake City, but will be enormously detrimental to wildlife in this area. So we appreciate your thoughtful consideration, and hopefully the tools that are in the plan can be fully developed, but make sure the vision matches the vision for Salt Lake City for this small area. Thank you.
Next will be Eric Orm, followed by Marina Grossman, and then Monica Hilding. Eric is here in person.
Hi, my name is Eric Orm. I am a property owner on 2200 West in the area, and I am in favor of the small area plan. I would like to encourage the council to not limit distribution and fulfillment uses in the plan for reasons Planning Commission has recommended. Water usage being at the forefront as to why we should allow distribution and warehousing as a permitted use. As we know, agriculture uses by far more water than any other land use. Agriculture also pollutes wetland more than any light industrial land use would. I am in favor of light industrial purpose zoning, or proposed zoning. And just to help illustrate a little more of the area, this land is not pushing the boundaries of development closer to the Great Salt Lake. This land is all east of current approved development. I own a small business in Salt Lake City and hope to expand my business to the land I own in the North Point area. I encourage City Council to approve the plan without restricted industrial uses on March 21st as scheduled. Thank you.
Next will be Marina Grossman, followed by Monica Hilding, and then Lynn McKenna. Marina is here in person.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Marina Grossman, and I live in District 7. I'm very much opposed to continued development in the area adjacent and surrounding the wetlands of the Great Salt Lake. I ask that you do not increase land use distribution in the North Point area, and any decisions you make moving forward are supported with an environmental impact and health assessment. While considering the changes, how will developing more industrial warehousing near wetlands and the diminishing Great Salt Lake benefit the Wasatch Front? What environmental impact will this have on the Great Salt Lake, the birds, and all of the other sentient beings that maintain the ecosystem and provide a life source for us? We know from nearby developments that there have been a lot of issues with mosquitoes. It seems that when we develop in a natural environment, which by its very nature requires mosquitoes and other such insects in order to maintain the ecosystem, and then do flyover mosquito abatements via airplane seems counterintuitive to the preservation of an ecosystem. I do want to acknowledge Mayor Mendenhall for their recommendations in maintaining limitations on land use distributions in the North Point small area, and I'd like to thank the City Council for your considerations. Thank you.
Next will be Monica Hilding, followed by Lynn McKenna, and then Chris Souther. Monica's here in person.
My name is Monica Hilding, and I'm a resident of District 4. So many citizens have spoken eloquently about why the North Point Small Area Plan should be paused. A 180-day moratorium on warehouse development seems like it would be a good idea. Is dedicating 22% of Salt Lake City's area to warehouse development while we are facing a climate crisis really in the public's interest. This area contains 60 homes, and we have a shortage of housing in Salt Lake. And to force these people out of their homes with the development that is going on and the trucks and noise and air pollution along 2200 South is unconscionable. The last thing we should be doing at a time when the Great Salt Lake is facing ecological collapse is destroying wildlife habitat, which may be the last refuge for hundreds of bird species. Salt Lake City, and I guess county, needs to develop a comprehensive plan for lands adjacent to the Great Salt Lake. This should be done before the council approves the North Point Small Area Plan. The city has produced a draft master plan, which has not yet been adopted by the city council. In response to community concerns, Mayor Mendenhall and her staff are trying to improve it. How can the city allow out-of-state developers to make life so miserable that people are forced from their homes? The city needs to do more to protect Salt Lake homeowners from developers like the Scannell Properties that are privately owned international commercial real estate development firms that care little about the harm they are inflicting. Please reject ordinance petition on the North Point Small Area Plan. Thank you.
Next will be Lynn McKenna, followed by Chris Souther and Heather Dole. Lynn, you are unmuted.
Thanks a lot. My name is Lynn McKenna. I'm actually from Mill Creek, but my feeling is that the Great Salt Lake is a treasure for everybody who lives in Utah, not just the people that live on the west side nearby, although they are more greatly affected. I agree with everything that's been said, asking for you to please pause the approval of the North Point plan until after more studies can be done. And also something that has not been mentioned so far, that is what is actually going to happen with the inland port. What they're now saying is that they are really shifting their focus. Ben Hart himself says he doesn't want to have a warehouse farms, huge warehouses there. They want to spend more money on logistics and also out of city at the satellite ports. However, they have a huge blueprint that's already dedicated to them. My question is, why can't the developers who want to build more warehouses in the last really beautiful and not already ruined wetlands on the south shore of the Great Salt Lake, why do you ruin that? Why not just have the inland port locate some warehouses where there's already going to be infrastructure, where there's already going to be trucks? They're looking at development of the electric trucks there and everything else. These things could work together and not sacrifice the homes, the duck clubs, the environment, the air quality, the water quality, and all the other things that you've heard so much about tonight. So I ask you, please, please do not go forward with this plan at this time. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.
Next is Chris Souther, followed by Heather Dole, and then David Quinney. Chris is here in person.
Yeah, I've lived on 2200 West for the last decade, and during that time I have spent countless hours fighting developers from coming in and capitalizing and at everyone else's expense in the area. I said it at the planning meeting, and with all due respect, I'll say it again, it would be hypocritical for the city to designate millions of dollars to try and save the Great Salt Lake while at the same time designating hundreds of acres of land for warehousing at the base of the Salt Lake. It would be hypocritical of the city to designate millions of dollars to try and mitigate the air pollution that we are battling, at the same time designating more warehousing and more manufacturing in the city when there's already hundreds of acres not even utilized in the inland port area. And it would be hypocritical for the city to designate millions of dollars to try and mitigate a housing crisis while at the same time designating hundreds of acres for warehouses instead of any types of houses. The studies have come out that show you can build any type of housing right now and it will alleviate anything would be useful. There's a lack of knowledge on alternatives to industrialization and agricultural properties in this area, so please push for the alternatives, whether it's land swap, sending receiving zones, different purchasing of land development rights are all alternatives that none of these this small group of about 5 to 7 landowners that have a decent amount of land in that area that want to capitalize and leave the area. So I think there are great alternatives, but no one really wants to hear them because they are very much being brainwashed, for a lack of better words, by out-of-state developers. And they believe truly that this is the only path for them to be able to capitalize on their investment. So if you all could promote the alternatives as well as to vote no for this, that would be great. Thank you.
Next will be Heather Dole, followed by David Quinney, and then Alex Bayo. Heather is here in person.
So good evening. My name is Heather Dove, not Dove, and I'm president of Great Salt Lake Audubon, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of our members. We believe the city needs to hit the pause button on this North Point master plan that's on the table tonight. The area in question is directly adjacent to the duck clubs that contain some of the last remaining high-functioning wetlands along the South Shore. The city needs to think carefully about whether it wants to sacrifice this area to yet another altogether unnecessary warehouse development, or whether it wants to preserve the last bits of natural area, habitat, housing, and rural life that remain along the south shore of the lake. We already have lost so much precious habitat to development and urban sprawl in the last 20 years, habitat that is gone forever. And now we are on the knife's edge with Great Salt Lake and its 10 million birds on the verge of ecological collapse. So instead of seeking to oust the residents, instead of ceding this difficult to access area to even more polluting warehouse development, the city should be thinking about how it can safeguard this residential area and its undeveloped lands, this area that is a critical part of the larger Great Salt Lake ecosystem. You should be taking this perhaps once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to evaluate how best to preserve and protect some of the last vestiges of the lake's functioning wetlands. Indeed, we think the city should be exploring how it can conserve the last tracts of habitat around the entire south shore of the lake. Please take this opportunity to do the right thing, which is to preserve this area both for those who live there currently and for the Great Salt Lake and its millions of birds and other wildlife that increasingly have nowhere else to turn to for shelter and forage. Thanks.
Next will be David Quinney, followed by Alex Bayo, and then Brandy O'Brien. David is here in person.
David? Yes, please. Thank you, Brian. Okay, Taylor, can we go on to the next person, please?
Next will be Alex Bayo, who is also here in person.
Hey everyone, thanks for letting me speak. My name is Alex Bayu. I'm a policy associate with Heal Utah, an organizer of Save Our Great Salt Lake, and a resident of District 3. I just want to speak really briefly. I won't be redundant. It's getting late. Just to my experience with working at Heal and trying to come up with sustainable initiatives for the inland port. I believe there's a few parallels here that can be drawn with the inland port. We really would have appreciated a human health risk assessment prior to coming up with the more just coming up with solutions for the port, to have a scale that we need to be recommending things for the port to happen for air pollution. And I think a similar, more robust study needs to be happening for this North Point district. HEAL doesn't really deal with wetland ecology, but as a representative of Save Our Great Salt Lake, we care very deeply about the birds and the millions of birds that are flying through here, the rippling effects all the way from the Tierra del Fuego all the way up to Alaska. We are begging you to put forth a much more robust study as to how this warehouse district will be affecting the wetland ecosystem. Thanks for your time.
Next, we will hear from Brandy O'Brien, followed by Mike Everton, and then Roberta Fletcher. Brandy, you are unmuted.
Hello, I appreciate the opportunity to comment on this plan tonight. I want to express my opposition to the plan. I moved to Salt Lake City about 2 years ago from Southern Utah, and I love it here, but the only reservation that I do have about settling here permanently is the air quality and also the semi-truck traffic. Originally coming from New York, the policies and priorities of the state government worried me. Local government in Salt Lake City has been the saving grace, though. I've watched you all curb a few threats from the state legislature since I've been here, and I've been extremely appreciative of that. And I hope that you'll prioritize the residents' needs here as well. As many have said before me, there does not seem to be a real need for this, and more protections need to be put in place before a plan is passed. The city is creating policy after policy that is driving residents away. So many people live here because of the incredible nature and recreation opportunities so close by. Turning the city into a sea of warehouses and flooding our highways with trucks is not what the residents want. This doesn't just affect the landowners in the area, it affects the whole city. And a few people could financially benefit, but the entire city is going to have to deal with the consequences. Thank you.
Next will be Mike Everton, followed by Roberta Fletcher, and then Paxton Goodman. Mike is here in person.
Hello, my name is Mike Everton. Thank you for the opportunity to come talk to you. I'm actually representing a client of mine, Daniel Rubenstein. He lives directly on 2200 West. The impacts on him from this, he would like to move. And I've been out there for about 1.5 years talking to different people, and I know a lot of the people, they do want to make a move. I think the plan, the way it is, allows him to move forward and other people that want to stay to be able to stay. I'm asking you to approve the plan on March 21st. Thank you for your time.
And next will be Roberta Fletcher, followed by Paxton Goodman, and then Dave Tolman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're unmuted now, Roberta.
Okay, thank you. My name is Roberta Fletcher. Thank you so much for allowing me to comment on this very important issue. I am a resident of Salt Lake City and just a concerned citizen who loves to visit areas around the Great Salt Lake, including birding along the South Shore, as well as Antelope Island and Promontory Point. By the way, I have to say, I do disagree with the previous commenter who said tonight that our comments are nonsense. They are not nonsense. They are all important. And I think we should be respectful of that. I oppose upzoning of the North Point area in this master plan to M1. I oppose this rezoning without some kind of environmental assessment of the impacts and some kind of health assessment on animals and people. Even though many or most of the 60 families or the landowners who live in this area may want this master plan to be approved, as people have previously pointed out, and maybe the property owners' land values will increase, and maybe they hope to find jobs at those warehouses, I don't know. But will they want to continue living there for the next 10 to 20 years with all the noise and air pollution they will encounter? Or will they just sell their land to industrial entities to make a profit? I want to emphasize that people are not the only living beings who would be impacted by rezoning to M1. We as human beings feel entitled that we should be the primary beneficiaries of any big change, but we are not. We need to remember that there are other living beings that benefit from a less spoiled land. Is the price of land to benefit human beings the only consideration we are looking at? There would be a huge impact on the Great Salt Lake ecosystem. The lake is already in dire straits. It is not worth having this plan, a plan without some kind of environmental assessment and health assessment. The stress of these changes would definitely affect the habitat.
Next will be Paxton Guman, followed by Dave Tolman, and then Dave Ildis. Paxton is here in person.
Good evening, council members. It's been a long night. You've heard a lot of comments. Thank you for your patience. Paxton Guyman, I'm a land use attorney. I've been practicing land use law for over 20 years. I represent Dave Tolman and Excel Development. They own 126 acres in this area, none of which have wetlands on them. Mr. Tolman desires to develop his project with light industrial uses, so we're here tonight to speak in favor of your adoption of this plan. I'd like you to step back for just a moment and think that much of practically everything that's been said to you tonight was presented to the Planning Commission. The same people, the same arguments. And the Planning Commission did their job. They listened to it, they looked at it carefully, and they came up with a well-reasoned recommendation. We would urge you to follow that recommendation, to adopt this small area plan. There's been a lot of hyperbole tonight. A lot of people have said that if you approve this plan, over 60 residents will forcibly be removed from their homes. And there's just no evidence to support that. The plan allows existing homeowners and residents to stay where they're at and to choose for themselves what to do with their property. We've also heard a lot of speculation that somehow approval of this plan tonight equates to a destruction of the Great Salt Lake. Yet I've heard no evidence to that effect. No data, no reports, no studies, nothing to show that correlation. We want to preserve the Great Salt Lake. Everybody does. That's a great attribute to our city. The reason the Great Salt Lake is suffering is because of drought, a lack of water, not because of development. In fact, if you look at what uses more water than any development, it's agricultural use. It's growing alfalfa. That is a much larger consumer of water than a light industrial use. In any event, let the process play out. The Planning Commission made a good recommendation, and understand that by adopting the small area plan, that doesn't equate to the next day having thousands of square feet of development out there. What it means is that the first step has been covered, and then applicants have to go through the land use approval process. Thank you.
Next will be Dave Tolman, followed by Dave Ildis, and then James Carolyn. Dave Tolman is here in person.
Good evening, Councilman. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and speak. I'm a landowner, 126 acres that Paxton mentioned just a minute ago, located on 3000 North and 2200 West. I appreciate the comments that have been made tonight. Most of them, though, have been made by people who don't live there or don't have property there. We are all concerned about air quality, and we're concerned about water. The property that we have there is farmed. We use a substantial amount of water. We have 450 acre-feet of water that we'll then turn around and sell to the city, that will then help preserve the Great Salt Lake. I think it's important for people to know that, and I'm sure you're aware of, but we have I-215 on one side, we have the North Salt Lake warehouses on the other side, and then Scannell's property with 6,000 feet of warehouse. I don't know what it is, or 6 million, square feet of warehouse. I don't know what it is that they're thinking, because this isn't a wildlife preserve. I appreciate Soren's comments. We have worked with Soren when we were looking at doing it as a residential project. We will continue to work with the Jordan River Commission in enhancing along the Jordan River. But when you farm property, you destroy all the wildlife. It's gone. It's tilled out. There's nothing there. And so with that, I think with smart people both in your staff and in the city itself can work together with the developers on the property to come up with a plan that does preserve some of the integrities that have been mentioned here tonight. And that's what we intend to do. I would urge you to go ahead and vote for the small area plan at your next meeting. Thank you.
Next will be Dave Ildis, followed by James Carolyn, and then Alma Mendoza. Dave, you are unmuted.
Hi, this is Dave Eltis. I live in Salt Lake City. I'm speaking against the North Point Small Area Plan. There's a lot of different comments on this. One thing that some of these developers have stated is that the development will be sustainable. Sustainable development is an oxymoron. The environment, they want to compromise the environment, and what happens when you compromise the environment over and over and over again, there's no environment left. You go down by half at every step that you take. So instead of this, please reject this plan and look at creating a green belt around Salt Lake City. You have the foothills, but we have very little of a green belt around the Great Salt Lake. It's been encroached upon by the inland port and other areas to the west side. Instead, look at perhaps double decking some of the warehouses that exist already on the west side. And then lastly, I've been a bike rider that's ridden out on 2200 West for approximately 30 years, then watched the development and the loss of wetlands out there to the east of 2200 West in the neighborhood of 7th North to 21st North, and now it's encroaching north of 2200 North. And this is likely in violation of federal law. Certainly the city council that I've spoken to, 6, 7, 8 years ago about this problem hasn't done anything. The mayor hasn't done anything to preserve this. And, this is likely in violation of federal wetlands law. And I just would ask you to reject this and establish a green belt around the Salt Lake Valley. Thank you.
Next will be James Carolyn, followed by Alma Mendoza, and then John Blankhead. James, you are unmuted.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for being here this evening. My name is James Carlin, and I'm one of 3 owners of OCC Industrial. I support the North Point Small Area Plan update and actually believe that it balances sustainable development while also generating long-term economic growth. I think I want to thank all the landowners also that have come out in support of this plan tonight as well. Wish I could have been there in person. Unfortunately, both my little ones got tested positive yesterday for COVID, so I have to show my support virtually tonight. But either way, as an environmentally conscious developer, there are several design requirements in this plan update that are going to generate one of the most sustainably developed light industrial and manufacturing areas in all of Salt Lake City. Some of these design requirements include increased setbacks that are going to preserve critically endangered and sensitive wetland areas, maximum frontage restrictions that are going to promote smaller buildings, which will then in turn reduce traffic and air pollution, building material restrictions that are compatible with the natural surrounding environment, including natural building materials and colors, landscaping requirements, which would promote pollinator-friendly and sustainable habitats for the critical wildlife surrounding this area, detention and retention pond guidelines that will promote proper stormwater management systems. And for all these multiple environmentally sensitive policies, I recommend approving the North Point Small Area Plan. This process has been going on for over 3 years, and I would greatly encourage City Council to take action and approve this plan as currently scheduled on March 21st. Thank you all for hearing the comments tonight. Thank you.
Next will be Alma Mendoza, followed by John Bankhead, and then Lisa Hazel. Alma is here in person.
Hello, City Council. My name is Alma Mendoza, and I own 5 parcels, all combined to each other, and half of my 10 acres of land but the Swanner property, a good amount of land in the North Point small area. I am here tonight to document my support for the master plan update. The reason I support this plan is because I would be able to maximize my land value. The reality is there will be millions of square footage of industrial development due to the Swanner project. And my land value would be higher if it were zoned industrial. Thank you to City staff, Planning Commission, and City Council for all your hard work. Please expeditiously approve this plan. This process has been going on for over 3 years now, and I would greatly appreciate it if City Council would approve this plan as scheduled on March 21st. Thank you.
Next will be John Bankhead, followed by Lisa Hazel, and then Madeline Balvey. John is here in person.
Mayor Mendenhall and council members, thank you for allowing me to be here. I am here along with Dave Tolman, a partner on the development that we would like to see happen on the 126 acres in the North Point area plan. I am a closet environmentalist, daylighting sometimes as a developer, and I've seen tonight portrayed as kind of a binary option between two fair extremes. And my experience in developing in the state over the last 15 years has been that there are great ways that we can navigate different various outcomes and needs and requirements to have a successful project. We were able to develop the Zion Center of Excellence on a Superfund site in Midvale. And personally, I remember taking acres and acres of cryptobiotic soil that had grown up along the Jordan River, harvesting that, storing it for 2 years while we built it, bringing it back and improving the habitat along the Jordan River. We hired biologists to talk about the bird patterns and what kind of plants could we plant along the river to make those migratory patterns better. So we actually didn't just preserve habitat, we improved it on an exceptionally damaged site. We went through the same exercise with the Adobe campus, which is a LEED Gold and LEED Platinum facility, to talk about energy usage, reducing the carbon footprint. And I believe that on the North Point area plan, there are ways that we can talk about sustainable development, not just use platitudes, but put very specific definitions and take those lessons that we've learned in the commercial office environment and put measurements in place so that we actually do something different. And so I believe that the development can happen. I ski in the mountains, I breathe the air, I run on Buffalo, or the island, and I love living in Utah because of the environment. I think that working with the city, starting with at least on our side, a blank slate, we want to engage and say, what are the best opportunities and challenges that we have and how can we solve them with you?
Next will be Lisa Hazel, followed by Madeline Balvey, and then Malin Mensch.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I do not want to see this plan ever approved of for any more development. Land is a living representation of every evolutionary miracle that we as humans did not create. Evolution created this beautiful place. Rezoning to allow warehouse development does not honor the incredible contribution nature has made over thousands of years. This land is rezoned and altered. It cannot be undone to create this beautiful wetland we have now. This land is being used by populations to nest and stop over during their migrations. Please do not interfere with this wildlife routine. Petition Biden to declare the Great Salt Lake a national monument so we can all enjoy this area. Do this for your children, your grandchildren, your health, and biodiversity. Biden can help, so please take advantage of his ability to give us a protected wetland area that will preserve the snow we rely on for the economy in Utah. Thank you.
Next will be Madeline Badley, followed by Malin Mensch, and then Mary Whitaker. Madeline is here in person.
In the world, so maybe someone will grab hold of this.
Hi, my name is Madeline Bavely. I'm a resident of Salt Lake City. I just want to join the voices of the many who have spoken against this plan. I want to emphasize that Those who have spoken against this are voices of people speaking on behalf of people and ecosystems. The few that have spoken for this have been speaking on behalf of corporations and businesses. So as representatives of us, the people, I hope that you take that into consideration and vote as you are supposed to do as our representatives. Thank you.
Next will be Malin Mensch and then Mary Whitaker. Malin, you are unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Malin Mensch. I have degrees in law and economics and an understanding of logistics from a long period of analysis when I was in Washington, D.C. doing this at a federal level. There's some things that I think the city needs to know about what's happened to the logistics landscape in the last 10 years. And it means that you should not indiscriminately upzone North Point to an M1 across the board. You'll run some very real risks. The Amazon free 2-day delivery model has turned the logistics industry on its head. It has led to a massive build out of last mile fulfillment centers on the fringes of suburban residential areas all across America. This has led to their wholesale degradation to industrialized areas against the suburban residents' will. That's what will happen to North Point if all of it changes to M1. Last mile delivery fulfillment centers take harm to adjacent communities to a new level compared to conventional warehouses. They encroach on suburbs because they have to be located within 7 to 9 miles of targeted customers. They are inherently inefficient. Pallets and packages have to be directly and instantly reachable, so they can't be stacked double or triple deep or more than 2 or 3 layers high. Consequently, such warehouses need 3 times the square footage to house the same quantity of goods. They average 28% of total supply chain expense where they are used, compared to a normal warehouse, which averages 3 to 4% of the entire supply chain expense. They need unimpeded access to and from the warehouse, which they will never have at North Point. Trucks access last mile warehouses round the clock at roughly triple the frequency that trucks access conventional warehouses. This creates a traffic nightmare for their neighbors.
Time. Next will be Mary Whitaker. Mary, you are unmuted. Mary, we still cannot hear you. I will continue to message with you in the chat. And that was our final registered comment for this item.
Excellent, thank you. And I know that we had a little bit of maybe some troubles with those people that were online, and we didn't get to hear some of those comments. So if those people want to submit their comments or email any of us as council members, please feel free to do that. We do take heart to all of the comments that are being made. I want to thank everyone here today for those comments. And with that, I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second. I have a council member. Nope. I have those. I have a motion from Council Member Pui and a second from Council Member Valdemoros. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing no.
I'm sorry, just a real question. And that was just to defer to a future meeting? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Sorry, I just had a...
Yeah, close and defer.
It's okay. It's a little.
Motion.
Okay.
Yeah, motion number 2. There you go.
Any further discussion on this? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 7-0. Thank you. We are moving on in our agenda. It's okay. You guys can go. In fact, we can take a quick break, council members, while people are headed out. We are going to recess for 5 minutes.
All right.
And to those that are still with us, we are back in our council meeting. Thank you for allowing a quick recess so that we can regroup and move on to the next item in our agenda. The next item is item C, which is a potential action item, which we have none of. And we are now on the general comment section. Well, I'll get there. First, we're questions to the mayor from the city council. Are there any questions to Madam Mayor? Madam Mayor, thank you for being here with us as always. Anyone?
You doing okay, Mayor? You still with us? You doing okay?
Yes. Well, thank you. There's no questions, so we will move on. Now we are at the general comment portion of our agenda. If you would like to give a public comment today, we are accepting comments in person and online on WebEx. This is the general public comment period, and so if it has already been in a public hearing today, we'd ask that you not re-comment on anything in the public hearing, but this portion of our comments is for anything else. I do want to remind everyone about our rules of decorum, which apply to this comment section. Those include being respectful. The council does respect all points of view and welcomes new insights. So we'd ask that you also be respectful while sharing your comments. Of course, if you don't want to comment personally or out loud, you can always email us, write us, call us, send a letter, a carrier pigeon. We will accept all the comments in all of the ways. To help us move through the public comments, Isaac Canedo, is it? I thought that Taylor was with us. Oh no, there's Isaac up there. From our staff will moderate our WebEx and will message you with any questions about our registration. Staff is handling many tasks, so please limit messages to technical issues and minimal informational updates. I don't know what that meant, sorry. Taylor Hill on our staff will call the names of those who wish to comment based on the order of registration or received comment cards.
Madam Chair, do you need a coffee break?
No, I'm fine. At the 2-minute mark, the host will announce time and your microphone will be muted. If you are unable to finish your comment, again, please send the rest via email, mail, or feel free to call our office. And with that, I will turn the time over, I believe, to Isaac.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looks like there are 3 people registered for general comment.
That sounds like Taylor.
The first will be Jim Webster, followed by Morena Crossman, and then Dave Iltis. Jim is here in person.
Yes, my name is James Webster. I live in Yale Crest in District 6. I'm a landscape architect, and I've designed a lot of trails, including Jordan River Parkway and so forth. What I'm here to comment on is, it's a kind of an interesting coincidence because you're talking about the potential desecration of a bird habitat, and I can tell you that Public Lands has already done that at Miller Park. Miller Park was given to the children of Salt Lake City in the 1920s by Minnie Miller as a bird habitat and nature park. It has gone through a lot of transformations. In 1987, it was determined that the trail system ought to be built according to ADA standards, if you're familiar with that. And any city that receives federal money as a result of 504 section of ADA is required to make as many trails as possible ADA compliant. What happened after the oil spill was that the city got $1 million and just basically tore that place apart. They widened the channel, widened the stream to 20 feet, created a lot of erosion, tore out an irrigation system, tore out a creekside path that had been used by the children for 30 years. It was 4 feet wide. They took out the retaining walls and so forth. So I responded with a CIP application, which is this. And the goals in that were to, number one, reinstate the lower path. And the other aspect of it was to reinstate the ADA compliance. It was approved by the City Council, and I appeal to you as the keeper of the purse to pay attention to what has happened subsequent to that. The plan looked something like this. I know you probably can't read it, but it was basically a complete loop, ADA compliant. What's happened after the oil spill is the city eradicated this path and put it up here, And when they got to a certain point here, they realized they don't own the property. And so they ran a ramp down that's impassable in the winter.
Time.
Am I already through? The last thing they did was
No,
this.
that's time, but if you want to leave those materials with us or make a comment and email them to us, we can certainly accept them, but thank you.
Yeah, I can leave this material if you haven't seen it. Have you all seen this?
I don't know, but we can definitely, if you want to leave it here on the table, we can take a look at it.
And did you distribute the comments that I gave to you?
So we did distribute that. We're gonna move on to our next person now. Thank you. Taylor?
Next will be Morena Crossman, followed by Dave Iltis. Morena is here in person.
Hello again. It's Marina Grossman. I actually just wanted to address the unsheltered community and the abatements that have been taking place downtown, and also just the mental health issues that surround that. I have been able to serve the unsheltered, and I've been able to work with ours. I'm sure you're familiar with them, our unsheltered relatives, and have had the opportunity to cook with them on many occasions. I don't know what the solution is. All I know is that once I leave here, I will stay until the end, since you all did for me. But I get to hop into my car and go to my home and sleep warm in my bed. And when I drop my children off at school in the morning, I see unsheltered folks pushing their carts, hauling their bags. And I just want you to consider, too, the crime rates that will continue to rise every time there's an abatement. So there's just a complete disrespect for life and resources on many levels. And I would like you really to take more time to focus on that issue. There are a lot of areas that, is that my time? I don't have any solutions, but this is just part of your job, so.
Time. And next will be Dave Iltis. Dave, you are unmuted.
Yeah, hi. This is Dave Eltis. I'm wanting to speak on the Glendale Water Park plan, and I asked to be able to speak during the item, but the request wasn't seen, so I am going to talk about that now. Generally, the plan looks really good. There are a couple things that I'd like to see. One is that the city make every effort to complete and finish the canal trail, which is adjacent to the golf course, as soon as possible. This is a extremely low-hanging fruit to get this done as an unpaved trail, and not too much more difficult to get this paved, which would add accessibility to the Glendale Water Park. The second is that there doesn't appear to be anything in the park plan for dark sky compliant lighting. If it's there, I missed it, but the Salt Lake City has a mediocre streetlights plan that they just passed, but the Parks Department doesn't seem to be paying any attention to that and continues to use lighting that is not dark sky compliant and is way too bright. Thirdly, the bike lanes on 1700 South should be improved to be protected bike lanes to allow people a safer access to the park via biking. And lastly, in the park itself, it would be great to see a perimeter trail similar to that you see in Liberty Park for people to run, exercise, walk, around the full perimeter of the park to tie the whole thing together. But generally, it looks good, but please make those adjustments before you vote on that. Thank you.
That was the final registered commenter this evening.
Excellent. Thank you for all of your comments and for all those who made comments. We are moving on in our agenda. Item E is new business. We have no new business items today. On to item F, unfinished business. Item F1 is regarding a resolution regarding ranked choice voting, and I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt a resolution to participate in the municipal alternative voting methods pilot program for ranked choice voting in 2023 municipal general election.
Second.
Whoa, who seconded that? Dan?
I did.
I have a motion by Councilmember Pui, a second by Councilmember Dugan. Any discussion on this? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. That passes 7-0. Item number 2 is an ordinance regarding local business assistance or ARPA grant awards. I will look for a motion. And this is a complicated motion, so let's all bear with each other. Anyone?
Madam Chair, I move motion number 1. I move that council adopt an ordinance approving American Rescue Plan Act local business assistance grant awards as shown in the funding log, except for items 2, 5, 7, 17, 27, 35, 37, and 41.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Dugan, a second by Councilmember Pui. Any discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That part of the motion passes 7-0. At this point, I would ask Councilmember Valdemoros to be recused.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilmember Pui.
I move that the council adopt an ordinance approving American Rescue Plan Act local business assistance grant award as shown on the funding log for items 2, 5, 7, 17, 35, 37, and 41.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Pui and a second by Councilmember Dugan. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes 6-0 with Councilmember Valdemoros being recused. At this point, if we can bring back Councilmember Valdemoros and Councilmember Petro can be recused. I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt an ordinance approving the American Rescue Plan Act local business assistance grants awards as shown in the funding log for item 27.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Dugan and a second by Councilmember Valdemoros. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes 6-0 with Councilmember Petro having been recused. If somebody would grab Councilmember Petro for us, please. We are on to item F3, which is a resolution authorizing execution of an interlocal agreement to transfer a MITS vehicle to West Valley City. I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt a resolution authorizing the approval of an interlocal cooperation agreement between Salt Lake City Corporation and West Valley City regarding the transfer of ownership of a tactical vehicle from Salt Lake City Corporation to West Valley City.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Dugan and a second by Councilmember Wharton. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Moving on to item number G, our consent agenda. I will look for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Pui and a second by Councilmember Dugan. Any discussion on this? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing no opposition, that passes 7-0. And this concludes our formal city council meeting. The meeting now stands adjourned. We'll see y'all here next week.